Breaking news. Welcome to today's headlines. What my father taught me about Biafra and my heritage. What my father taught me about Biafra and heritage. To my dear listeners from wherever you're listening from, stay tuned as I read today's news. My earliest memories of Biafra are the same as my earliest memories of my father. I can remember sitting next to him on bed and touched his arm. He turned to me and he said, "Can't you see your father is crying?" It was many years later that I realized he was crying because of Biafra. That was 50 years ago today. I didn't see my father cry again. He was mourning the loss of the Biafra dream. For me and for many of the diaspora, Biafra is a presence that haunts us. It is a part of our history that is not spoken about, and yet we try to make sense of it by reading, watching, plays, and attending lectures. All of this in an attempt to understand this dream that was on the cusp of being realized and yet failed so painfully. I was 2 when the war began and 4 when it ended. This was a civil war in Nigeria fought between the Nigerian government and the eastern region of Nigeria, predominantly the home of the Igbo people, the eastern region, in response to violence and massacres, as well as political, economic, cultural, and religious tensions, declared itself the state of Biafra on 30th May 1967 and seceded from Nigeria. Nigeria was a creation of the British in 1914. It was established for colonial administrative convenience. It merged 3 separate cultures into one. To the north were the Fulani and Hausa speaking people, often nomadic, principally of the Muslim faith. To the west and the river Niger were the Yoruba, largely farmers, living under a rigid monarchical system, and Christian. To the east were the predominantly Igbo-speaking people, also Christian, but with a strain of Judaism and more Republican in their outlook. Nigeria is not, and never has been, a cohesive whole. However, in 1960, Nigeria was granted independence. Violence and coups ensued. In response to Biafra secession, the Nigerian government backed the former colonial masters, countered with a brutal war. Millions of Biafrans died, most as a result of the deliberate government policy of starvation. From July 1967 to January 1970, Biafrans fought to free themselves from Nigerian oppression and from the lingering vestiges of poisonous colonialism. Biafra was starved into submission. Biafra was, and still is, a powerful vision of freedom and self-determination. I have a deep and abiding rootedness in Biafra and the UK. My father studied at the LSE in the early 1960s, and his first job as an academic was in England. I was born in the UK and brought up in 2 different cultures. To me, Biafra is a dream and a shadow. It is a dream of my father. I remember bouncing into the kitchen aged 9 or 10. We were living in Norwich at the time and informing my mother that I was Biafran because dad said so. She told me quite rightly that Biafra does not exist. I ignored her. This was 1975, 5 years after the war had ended, but my father still dreamed. He was Biafran, and so were we. At least once a week, we had to eat fufu, a traditional meal, a traditional Biafran meal. As far as my father was concerned, fufu, like our Biafran identity, was both compulsory and necessary, and he made sure that we knew this. My sisters and me would anchor after fish and chips. My father died 17 years ago. We flew his body home to be buried. It went without saying that he needed to be laid to rest in the place that was truly home for him. My father's tie to the home country was a tie to the dream of Biafra. He never stopped believing in Biafra. It was a passion and a dream that consumed him. His passion for Biafra shaped the way my two sisters and I were brought up. His passion for Biafra lingers in my life and has influenced the way I interact with the world and the way in which I struggle the thirst for justice. But Biafra is also a shadow, not just for me, but for many people. It is the shadow of our past in Nigeria as a nation, whether we acknowledge it or not. The shadow of Biafra exists in the memories of the war and the many stories that are told about it behind closed doors. The shadows and dreams of Biafra are invisible but still very profound. That brought us up to believe in Biafra. He was always deeply passionate about Biafra in our hometown of Mbaise. When I was 12, we moved to Nigeria from the UK. Dad wanted us to attend school in Nigeria. We lived in a small town called Ida on the eastern bank of the River Niger in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria. My father had unwritten rules. We were not allowed to study in the north. We were not allowed to marry anybody from the north, and he gave us strict instructions to marry from Mbaise in the southeast of Nigeria. Needless to say, that was the one time I disobeyed him because I eventually married a Yoruba man from the west of Nigeria. During the war, my father was away campaigning and trying to raise money for an organization called the Friends of Biafra. His dream was so powerful and the needs of Biafra so urgent that he simply had to leave his family at this crucial time and respond. My younger sister was born then, but Biafra had to come first. His thirst for justice and his activism shaped my own thirst for these things. At 8, I was raising money to buy presents for elderly people in a nearby home. At 10, I was joining sponsored sleep out for Amnesty International. At 12, I was writing about Steve Biko. The dream of my father continues to shape and influence me in my contemporary social justice activities.